we had to recreate a first-generation evangelistic passion. Because if you've been saved for 10 years, you don't typically have as many non-Christian friends as you did in the early years. So we're going to recreate, we're going to pray and do everything we can, evangelistic passion. 2, as margin, you're big on financial margin, time margin, emotional margin, spiritual margin, you want margin. We, expenses went up and our margin went down. We grow with margin.
Yep.
So we create margin for opportunities we cannot predict. That's how we start new campuses, and that got smaller, so we're going to create it. How do you create it? Well, you get expenses down, you get revenue up, you innovate, and then simplify processes. We just got slower, bigger and slower. Growth creates complexity, complexity kills growth, so we're going to get faster again.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the GrowLeader podcast, where we grow leaders that grow churches by helping them reach their full potential. We're so glad you're with us today. If you're new to the show, my name's Matt. Happy to be your tour guide, sitting alongside my pastor, Pastor Chris Hodges.
And I'm real thrilled to be here today. We're going to have a lot of fun. We've already been laughing before the recording began.
We've been talking about our guest today, for a couple of years.
Because I've been trying to get this guy on podcast for a long time, and he's one of my dearest friends. So I'm not even going to hem-haw around. We still say hem-haw?
We do now.
I'm not even going to hem-haw around. I want to get
we were hem-hawing before we started.
we were hem-hawing, but I'm so delighted that you're here. Craig Groeschel, I think everybody needs no introduction, is one of the greatest leaders in the world, Christian or secular. It doesn't matter. You're truly one of the best minds, greatest leaders, and has been a dear friend for a long time. He pastors the largest church in America, so that just should perk everyone's ears up. This is the GrowLeader podcast, and I don't know anyone, Craig, that knows how to grow a church and to lead a church and build a church like you. It was meeting you. Do you remember what year that was?
Would have been like 2003, 2000, not much later than that.
And when I was still desperately trying to figure things out, we were having some moderate success, but it was truly, I can say this.
Yeah, moderate success. You were in a school running like 5,000 or 7,000 people.
That's about more like 3 or 4, but thank you very much. But but still unsure about a lot of things. And it was meeting you, and I can say this in all sincerity and integrity. It was probably the most pivotal moment of my leadership life that set the trajectory of Church of the Highlands in a completely different direction.
Well, it's mutual because we both learned from each other. We had a 1-hour meeting scheduled that turned into, I think,
3 days.
3 days.
2 days.
Yes, literally, I had a 1 hour blocked off for it. Someone said, "You got to meet this guy. He's really sharp, Chris Hodges." And I was like, "Yeah, let's go a little longer than that." I think it went 3 days.
It did.
So I've been learning from you the whole time. It's a mutual. It's a great experience to have good friends that have integrity and a heart to grow, and so it's been a fun friendship.
Yeah, and I want to say the same. You're not just someone I lean on to get the latest idea or what are you innovating, but I've really valued your friendship through the good and the bad, and we regularly check on each other. Our conversations are usually pretty short because we're both very type A leaders with a lot going on. But I'm grateful that we have, pretty regularly stayed in touch. And but anyway, I appreciate you. I'm grateful.
Same to you.
You're here also speaking at our church, and so I'm grateful for that as well. But I want to jump right into a list of questions that we're not going to get to them all. I wish we had now about an hour and a half to do this because we have so much we can learn from him. But just tell us how things are going at Life Church. Just give us an update on all things Life Church right now.
Well, we're recording this in 2024, and so it's 4 years, 3 years plus after the world changed, and I hate to say it, but the truth is things are now back to where I would say I am enjoying the work of God through our church again, and
That's
so
awesome.
it's taken that long. And if you'd asked me a year ago, I would say it's close, but it's not there. And I would say it took a long time to recreate a healthy culture, kind of a unified direction, kind of recreating momentum or finding in what God is doing in a new way and relearning how we have to think in different times. And so right now it is what I'd say is again a special season, but I wouldn't have described it that way 2 years ago for sure.
So are you defining that you're enjoying it again now? You mentioned culture first. Is that the main one?
I think culture is a big part of it, but both in our staff and in the whole church. And so even with the staff, we realized there were a lot of people, we brought on a lot of newer team members, And the kind of what I'd call first generation passion wasn't as warm as it used to be. It felt, and we even actually started studying kind of generational thought processes, because we did have people that they're not just first generation, they didn't help start it. They're not just second generation, they've come into something that has been built before them. And their mindsets are very, very different. And so we started working on how do we think like first generation leaders? How do we think attack, grow, passion, no excuses, get it done no matter what? And so that took some work.
So can I ask a really practical question?
Yes.
Because I think, both of you, we could spend 4 hours here talking about all that you've learned in the years, but what were some of those things? Because I think every church faces that. When it's beyond the founding pastor and that founding team, that original lead team, how do you get that DNA back into a staff team?
Yeah. Well, it's not easy. To change a culture, to heal a culture, to improve a culture, it typically takes some time. I've often said, a year to 5 years, depending on what kind of situation you're in, to really completely change a culture. Sometimes you have to have turnover. You're changing the way people think. So in the generations, a first generation mindset is generally a risk taker. You kind of you don't have a lot to lose. You're willing to take some risk. You're aggressive, and then if you make the right risk and you have faith, then you see early payoffs. And you're used to doing it on a shoestring. You don't have any kind of budget, and you're a scrapper. Second generation comes along and they saw the first generation do it, so they appreciate it, but they don't want to lose what the first generation built because they saw it, and so they're typically more conservative. They're more protective. They're guardians. Third generation comes on and doesn't know any of the story. They're inheriting a lot. Does not make them bad. They're not. There's to no fault of their own.
They're in a resource-rich environment.
They're in a resource-rich environment, and so they could become entitled to no fault of their own, and think that you solve problems with money instead of with prayer, or with resources instead of with innovation. And so that's just by nature, and the same is true in families with wealth or in any type of blessing. By nature, those generations typically think differently. And so what we did is we're not going to blame anyone for when they enter. It's no one's fault. We want to celebrate all the blessings that we have, but we want to train everyone to think like a first generation church planter, a first generation leader.
Have you written some of those out?
No, what we did is we talked a lot about values and really tried to drive those deep. And so what happened is,
so it's not a list that they're all reciting or learning or you're posting in their cubicles.
No, but we're trying to say, how do you think when you don't have resources, and how do you attack situations, and how do you move quickly? And then what we did is this sounds kind of crazy, but we said we're going to work on 3 things. And we will be talking about these things a year from now, probably 2 years from now. And we have never had what I call like a multi-year push, but we did on these things. We're going to reach people, create margin, simplify processes. Reach people, create margin, simplify process. I want it on walls. I want it in the halls. I want it in your heart. I want it tattooed. Yeah. And so it became every meeting, for over 2 years, reach people, because we had to recreate a first generation evangelistic passion. Because if you've been saved for 10 years, you don't typically have as many non-Christian friends as you did in the early years. So we're going to recreate, we're going to pray and do everything we can, evangelistic passion. 2, as margin, you're big on financial margin, time margin, emotional margin, spiritual margin, you want margin. Expenses went up and our margin went down. We grow with margin.
Yep.
So we create margin for opportunities we cannot predict. That's how we start new campuses, and that got smaller. So we're going to create it. How do you create it? Well, you get expenses down, you get revenue up, you innovate, and then simplify processes. We just got slower, bigger and slower. Growth creates complexity. Complexity kills growth. So we're going to get faster again. If we can cut meetings in half, cut them in half. If we can do one every 2 weeks instead of every week, if not as many people have to come. If it takes 3 signatures to get something done, can we get it done with 1? Can we do it without a signature? We got to get faster. So reach people, create margin, simplify processes for over 2 years. Every meeting we led with that.
Wow.
And what's crazy is in the old days, we'd say something once or twice and 3 months later we're on to something else because we kind of got it done. It took 2 years to really bring that focus, and now the team is aligned and it's working well again.
So let's talk about the first one for a minute, because you said you also have momentum back. I'm assuming you're talking about the momentum in attendance and engagement.
And at certain locations, we are seeing what I'd call first generation spiritual results, meaning, I got from a newer campus, they had a smaller campus, 118 salvation in a 2-week period. The guy texted me to tell me that. That's like old percentages. And what that is that's first generation passion.
So what are you doing to reach people? I want to talk about that first one for a second.
So it's going to be everything. It's going to be starting with our prayer lives. Meaning, if we're not praying for people that are far from God, we're not going to be caring about them. So it starts with no one sees, and then as a team, we are bringing people to church, not just inviting. It's different. Right. Inviting is easy. You can someone hand a waitress or a waiter.
Sit with me.
Yeah, no, but we're inviting, and so every week we are talking about who we're praying for. We're talking about who we invited, and there's accountability to it. So it's not just, we can't go tell the church to do something we're not doing. And then we're real simple things, like we're creating kind of an evangelistic passion to the campus pastors. I'll tell them, here's what we're talking about next week, and I want you to, I'm going to talk about it, I want you to talk about it. So we're going to try to create interest on people coming back, and here's who you need to bring. So it's basics, but it starts with us. We can't go, we're not going to tell our church, bring people next week.
Right.
When you weren't praying yourself.
Has anything changed on Sunday or the weekend experience that to reach more people?
I would say yes. No, on the weekend experience, if there's anything that's changing for us, is I try to, I don't know what's happening in other churches, but I try to read what God is doing in our church. To me, what I think is there is more of a hunger for in-person everything. Just like genuine connection. And so I think it starts with a connection to God. And so we started our churches in a similar time frame. Back then, we were in some ways trying to demystify church, make it more accessible to people. I'd say we're almost doing the opposite now. Now we're trying to almost say, when you come in here, you're coming in for a spiritual calendar. Let's just call it that. And we always were, but we're kind of leading with that now. Like, we want you to encounter God.
Yeah, that's great.
And it starts in worship. So worship is not just songs we sing, but it's more participatory, genuine, heartfelt worship. And then the teaching part of it, oddly enough, to be evangelistic, in the past, I would be always spiritual, always present the gospel, but I would be a little bit more practical and kind of lead with practical. Now I'm just leading with spiritual. And I think people are hurting, depressed, anxious, self-harm, eating disorders, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. Like, let's just cut all the practical stuff and let's just say, we're hurting and we need a God who saves, and his name is Jesus. And so just like very more direct teaching. And whether or not that's right, what it is it's true to what's God's doing in our hearts. And so I don't think there's a one size fits all, that we're all in different parts of the country. Our churches are different ages and different stages. We have different gifts. So I would never say, hey, this is right for Church of the Highlands or First Baptist Church in, Wisconsin or whatever. But I'm saying we want to be true.
I think it is transferable. I think this is something we all need.
Maybe, but it's true. Like, I believe it. And so I always tell leaders that, a good plan with deep passion is better than a great plan with little passion.
Right.
And so it's what I believe in, and so I can lead to it.
And Pastor Chris has even led us over with community taking the priority over content, because we've been so content driven for so long that people are really looking for the lobby experience as much as they are.
Coming out of COVID, everybody was lonely. They were social distancing turned into soul distancing, and so we're focusing on foyers again and conversation and small groups and anything that's connecting.
And I'm a student now. So before COVID, you asked me what I think. I'll give you a game plan. Now I'm trying to read what is different. And one thing that was different for us is they didn't come on the weekends as much, but they came midweek. Well, why is that? I'm not sure.
Right.
But I noticed they were. So for our environment, they would come on a Tuesday night over and over, or Thursday night. So let's work with what's working. Let's provide spiritual connection on those times, and just we might change programming, but I'm not going to try to force them into my mold. I'm going to try to say how is God working in the lives of people today, and be in tune with that.
And even when we started, we both started pretty much at the same time. Life Church is how old now? About
96 we started. So we were.
I thought you said you were 96 years old.
Yeah, it feels like 1996, 20, almost 28 years old. You're 5 years behind
you're
us,
5 years ahead.
Yeah.
But when we both first started, content was scarce. And so
now content's everywhere.
And content's everywhere now, And so I'll always say, instead of information, we need to be thinking more transformation.
Yes. And so content was scarce and it was kind of valuable. Now relationships are more scarce, and content is everywhere. So I think it's providing spiritual connection, community, really, it's always mattered. I think it matters a lot now.
So you guys are always innovating. So what are you working on right now?
Oddly enough, not a whole lot that's new. So my answer is almost kind of boring. I'm really excited about the same things. We're still starting new locations, and that there's way more of that. It's, we're starting a new location. What that means is that we're raising up leaders. That means that we're raising the evangelistic temperature. That means we're creating financial margin, and we're seeing God bless it when we do it. So that's kind of a strategy of kingdom impact. And then, the leadership angle is just I feel more like I'm following what God has put in front of me.
So good,
I didn't
Craig.
plan to be teaching a lot on leadership, but I'm finding that it's actually a very evangelistic tool. And it's a little bit more unique. A lot of guys can fill in and preach, but this is a little more unique for me. And then the YouVersion Bible app is it's special. It's
I want to talk about that in a minute, because I think there's an opportunity for a lot of churches to actually get involved with YouVersion, and they don't even know that there's a need. But let me ask you, when you mentioned you're launching new locations, is there anything new on that front, or is that playbook that that you've run to start the ones you have, is that the same, or is it changing in any kind of a way?
I would say it's changed a little bit, and again, I wouldn't go out and tell a lot of people to do this today.
Right.
Meaning, I think that it's harder to do well today than ever before.
I
There
agree
are
with that.
so many, like in Oklahoma City, there might be 20 campuses that are a second, third, fourth campus of another church, and if not done well, it kind of lowers the bar for all of us. And so I would actually say, I used to say this is a really great tool for many churches. I'd actually say it's a great tool for some churches.
Right.
But more so, I think just, if you do one place and you do it really, really well, that's a fantastic thing. You don't diminish, that. But a little bit what we're doing different, and only because of our stage where we are, and you might be this way too, is we used to go in a lot of times in a school, 3-4 years there, buy land, build. Now we're able to actually go in, buy land, build first, and go straight to a building. But that's in a mature version of what we're doing. I wouldn't recommend that for us 15 years ago.
Yeah.
We're able to do that. And so our pipeline of leaders is strong. Our ability, because we've been around, to develop a core group in an area is stronger.
Right.
And so we're able to cut down a couple of stages and get to viability of spiritual impact faster.
I was just on the phone with a pastor who's asking about multi-site, and I heard myself say, just don't do it if you can't do it well. And I do think there's something to that that is very, very important. What is the pipeline for leadership? I think I know what it is, but I would love for the audience to hear.
Well, so anytime you're going to scale anything up, you have to know what the drivers are, right? So let's talk churches. If we're going to grow at a single site, then we're going to need opportunities for people to serve. We're going to need money to fund whatever, pay for the, we're going to need spiritual leaders, pastors, call it what it is. We're going to need content. So you kind of define those things. For us, if we're doing multiple sites, we need places to meet. We need some kind of building stuff. We need a financial plan. We need to raise up the staff. And then we need people to show up and serve. Or if any one of those things aren't growing at the same pace, we can't scale up.
Right.
The pipeline in the early years was like, where do you get campus pastors? Well, we couldn't find them. So we decided, you don't find them, you build them. Where do you find great staff members? The best plan, like you do this really well, we don't find them, we build them. We're going to develop leadership. So we don't have a leadership program. And when I say pipeline, there's no the pipeline is the culture, meaning that from day one, you're gonna come into and you're gonna be developed. Everyone's gonna be developed. Right. Now, what we do have, and we didn't have this earlier, is we have roles that are developmental roles, and so we might have 8 or 9 or 10 associate youth pastors. We might have 8 or 9 or 10 associate worship pastors, 8 or 9, 10 associate campus pastors, life kids pastors, and we're able to do that now. We couldn't have done that 15 years ago, but they are in developmental roles. And they start as interns, maybe volunteer interns and paid interns, then associate, and 6 years later they're a youth pastor or whatever.
Yeah, and it allows the cream to rise to the top, so to speak. Yeah,
and
that's the story of the guy right back next to me.
Amazing. I didn't know that.
He came in as a video editor. Now he's a campus pastor at one of our largest locations.
Yes,
because his leadership became so evident as we developed him in house.
But the key is we don't want a leadership program or class. We want a culture that develops leaders.
Well, I think the beauty of what I got to be a part of was being in an environment where somebody pointed it out, where Pastor Lane or Pastor Chris said, "Hey, you sure? We don't know if you're in the best spot." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And it was a positive thing. We've had, Tommy comes down and helps our campus pastors, and we're learning from you guys all the time.
Good.
You know, how to move people out of that middle 9:30 service, 9:45 service, and put them somewhere else. And he's the best at it. You know, just in how he uses his words. But I think the ongoing learning culture piece is massive.
It's massive for all of us.
It's
yes.
big.
Yeah, and we do try to do that well. You mentioned YouVersion. I want to talk about it, and I'll just for a disclaimer, Craig did not ask me to talk about this. I want to talk about this because I think one of the things that churches, especially that are in the network that we have with GrowLeader, we need to be more intentional in our missions giving, and we need to be very focused on what the real solutions to the world are. I think they are leadership, church planting, making sure we're in unreached areas. But it's got to include scriptural engagement. And I want you to introduce, I think people know the app, but I want you to introduce the ministry of YouVersion. And I'm just going to say it straight up. It's in the hopes that more churches, I was asking Bobby before while you were actually in the restroom, I was asking Bobby about how many churches support YouVersion. And I just think it needs to be a whole lot more because I think it's the best scriptural engagement tool on the planet. But give us an update on it.
How many do you say? Because it's not very many. I don't know
how many
churches. Yeah, it's not a lot.
He said it's not a lot.
Yeah, it's not very many.
But I do think the potential is for a whole lot more.
Well, we have kind of asked God for that to maybe even be a possibility for churches. But so YouVersion started 15 years ago. By little bit late, by late 2025, we're on track to cross it being on over 1 billion devices that we've been giving away for free,
which is going to happen sometime next year, right?
Yeah, sometime next year, probably October, November next year.
That's
It'll
so
be on 1 billion devices, and so we're really ramping it up. We Bobby it was his idea. He founded it, and he's kind of an innovative and technology genius, but he has a real heart for ministry. And several years ago, he had handed it off, and he came to me and said, "I think we're kind of nickel and diming this. We really should, if God's going to entrust us with maybe the best Bible engagement tool in our generation, maybe in the history of the world, we should put more into it." And so we have through our church been taken the budget basically, and we'll have doubled it in 2 years. And what's happening is we're bringing great people on, and it's working. Like we had 20 million downloads in a month, and outpacing that. And so we're working really, really hard for a couple things. One is we want to create Bible content that's it's in every language, to help people grow closer. But we really want to serve churches with it, and we want to be able to eventually maybe have someone comes to Church of the Highlands and you have your own kind of version of it. It kind of looks like yours, where we're not. There's no one taking credit for it. We're basically dispersing the use so that all churches can use it to help engage people in God's Word, and then promote their own content and church engagement on it. And it's working. And I think in the next couple of years, the ability for churches to use it beyond just individuals, but churches corporately to use, is going to be really special. Our heart is to give, and we have done it for years and years. And the vision is now bigger than our capacity to do it. So we're thankful for everybody that helps.
Which is why more of us need to be involved.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I mean that. I really do mean that. I never promote something that we don't personally give to.
Well, same with ARC. So like ARC is something that's there. I've always had it in my heart to do a church planting something, and I've never done it because I couldn't do it better. And so we give toward ARC because you're the best. It's the best I know of.
Yeah, don't compete, partner.
Exactly. Yes.
So we have a few minutes left. The question I want to get to, it speaks to the new book you have, is your personal disciplines. You are, at least in my mind, you are, what I know about you, are the most disciplined person I know. The book, Think Ahead, that you wrote, really, you said really probably the better title would have been Pre-Decide. I love that thought.
Yes.
Unpack it.
Yeah. Well, here's what's interesting, and thank you for that compliment. We're all very disciplined, and so, or we're all undisciplined, meaning that we're disciplined. We do the things we want to do, and we don't do things we don't want to do. So naturally, I would say I'm undisciplined in some of the better habits. For example, I was blessed with good genetics. I could eat anything I wanted until one day I couldn't. So I ate anything, junk food, and then one day I woke up and I was like, "Oh, what happened?" Like it wasn't working, and so I started intentionally deciding If I'm going to be at my best at 45 or 50, then I need to learn how to take care of my body. And so the idea of pre-deciding is, if there's any area of success in my life, it's not that I'm successful in the moment, it's that I came up with a plan ahead of time to help me be more successful. And I obsess about it, nerd out, everything from putting my clothes out in the morning, having my breakfast.
That's what I wanted. I wanted to hear a few
weird,
hacks.
I mean, weird stuff. There's no hacks. It's just weird. Like all my supplements are laid out. I get my little breakfast stuff is all set out just to make it as efficient between when I get up until I'm in the office with the Bible open. I want it to be as short a time as possible. And I actually I count the number of steps in the kitchen to get it done in the most efficient time. It's totally stupid. It doesn't matter, but it matters to me.
Yeah.
So my meals are pre-planned. Every breakfast and lunch, I already know what I'm going to eat. Dinner, I'm flexible because I'm going to do what Amy wants or with friends. And so I'm not super legalistic, but there's certain things I'll eat. I'll eat as much as I want of anything because there's no limit, but it's only these things. I will cheat, but it's often very little things. Like if I preach a good sermon, I'll eat 5 M&Ms. Yeah. And so I got this big one of those big tubs of M&Ms, like 4 years old, and it's just a little bit down of it. Yeah, It's so I don't. But I can eat one bite of a dessert and be done. And
what's the best thought in this book that every pastor needs?
I would say for any pastor, in any area of life, it's unfair to say one thought. If you have a vulnerability, you have to name it, and you have to determine ahead of time to close that door. If you have a vulnerability of pride, if you're tempted to lust, look at the wrong things. If you're tempted to sleep in too late, whatever it is, wherever you have to be honest about where you're vulnerable. You're only as strong as you're honest, and then you have to close the door or create a system ahead of time to be successful. If you spend too much money, you got to say first 10% to God. Next 10%, you got to create a system. You got to plan. You got to pre-decide what you're going to do. So that would be in that discipline area. And then I would say, decide ahead of time, what is the result you want? Do you want to be close to God? Then what's going to make you close to God? And it's going to be different for everybody. It might be you're already good in the Word, and maybe it's for you as enriching a prayer life, or maybe it's spiritual community, or maybe it's confessing some kind of sin, or maybe it might be journaling, it might be worship, whatever it is. But you determine the outcome that you want, and then determine what are the things that will help contribute to the outcome. Then create a plan to do it. Pre-decide, and then just have a no excuse those things go into our lives. And so my schedule is rigid. They're very rarely are there exceptions. And so I've tried to program in the things that help me be successful, program out the things that would help me, would take me off my game. And so then it takes less energy.
Right. It seems like, though, that most people are good at making that plan. I can imagine most can sit down and figure out what to name the problem, what to do about it. What's the secret to actually doing it tomorrow?
I think that...
What's the day-to-day?
Here's what happens is when you... I'm afraid to stop. Is once you start
what do you mean by that?
When you start on the right track, then it becomes almost like if I'm going to cheat on a diet, I'm going to plan for it. So I'm not going to do it on Tuesday and then Wednesday and Thursday. I'm going to plan for it on Friday, and I'm going to look forward to it. I'm going to do it then. And so I'm going to work a plan, because without a plan, I am a disaster. Meaning,
and is there any accountability? Do you involve other people, or for the areas that do you have an area where you wish you were more disciplined in it? And then what are you doing about it?
This sounds silly, really bad, and please forgive me because I got weaknesses everywhere. Not in this area.
Okay,
I don't. I don't have any. I've dialed it in, and I don't have to have accountability now because because there's so much accountability already there. For example, everywhere I drive, everyone in my office sees it. Amy sees it. All my miles are tracked. There's accountability. What I make, what I give, what I spend. The people in my office, most of them see it. Several people see it.
But I'm even talking about the accountability to the disciplines of not
on eating,
from a sinful standpoint, just from a accomplishment standpoint. Like what?
Have you gamified it in your mind?
I kind of gamify it a little bit, and I don't want to lose, but I don't want to lose. Meaning I don't want to lose. Like I don't want to lose, but I also don't want to mess up and lose.
Right.
And so to me it's systems, that there's checks and balances. That it's not that I'm good. It's not that I'm hyper disciplined. It's that I make it really like James Clear's. I'm going to make it easy to succeed. I'm going to make it hard to fail. I'm going to put stuff really distant. Like in my house, there's not food that's going to tempt me, because if it were there, I would eat it. but I'm not going to bring it there.
Yeah.
In my office, there's going to be all the snacks that I want are always going to be stacked ahead of time. And so when I'm hungry, I go to what's good,
right,
and I'm going to stay away from what's not. And so it's not hyper discipline, but then you get in the zone and I don't want to break it.
Yeah. So good.
I think both of you, though, being very
you
close
do the same thing. Like
you're both hyper
21 days of fasting. You're going to do it a couple times a year. I don't do that, and so that's you've chosen that with intentionality. And you don't cave on it. And so the key is finding the areas that are consistent with how God wired you.
It's great.
And and then what gives you spiritual confidence. Like for me,
that's great.
I have a discipline of the sermon's done by Wednesday at noon, and that's a deadline that I've created. I don't ever break it. And
is that so you can
I can
marinate
move on
it all?
So I can move on. So like I'm already working on next week's this week, and so I got a running start on it. And then on Wednesday, now it's done. I can put it aside. Now I can actually attack other things. If not, that thing is just consuming me, and I don't feel like I can do anything done. Then Saturday, I come back and I go back deep into it again. So it doesn't go away, but it frees me up. That's a discipline I need. Other people, that would be unfair because they work better under pressure. They need to wait until later in the week. And so I'm not bragging at all. No, I'm saying I need them.
But I think they need these examples. I think they need to hear things like this so they know how to create those systems themselves. We need more time, man.
And I think both of you, we do need more time. We need to do this again sometime. I think both of you, and it's hyper discipline is one way to say it. I think it's hyper intentionality because I've heard
it is intentionality.
No lunches outside of the office. It's 30 minutes of commute on both sides of the lunch.
I don't do lunch outside the office. Yeah, and that sounds again.
I don't either.
I don't do them ever.
Yes, there are lunches, but people are coming to you. You get to control the menu.
Right, you control the commute time. Yeah,
it's awesome. Don't overbake the cookies. I've heard you talk about that.
Don't overbake. On the message, don't overbake them, which I have done.
He's not going to eat them anyway. So I don't know why it matters.
It's interesting that you use cookies.
You don't want them raw, and you don't want them burned.
Don't burn the kale chips, everybody. That's good. Hey, I want to say before we finish, just what you're doing in the podcast space, because that's the space that we're trying to grow in and leverage to help people. It's just unbelievable. I have so many friends that are business guys that aren't even really God followers, and they know you and they know who you are. And so thank you for continuing to put out incredible content.
Thank you. We need to have you on ours. We need to do it.
It's incredible. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Hey, everybody, if this was helpful today, share it. Reach out to somebody that needs it. Thank you so much for being with us on the GrowLeader podcast. We will see you next time. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And we also want to say a big thank you to all of our partners that help make the GrowLeader podcast happen each and every month. For over 80 years, the Western Investment Foundation has helped churches with their borrowing and their investing needs. Whether you're dreaming of a new opportunity or seeking wise counsel about resource management, WIF can assist you. You can learn more about them at wifonline.com/GrowLeader. Next is our newest partner, Studio C. Studio C can help you know your people and grow your church. They combine strategy, technology, and communications to maximize church member engagement. You can bridge the engagement gap and transform your church's impact with Studio C. Learn more about them at their website. It's thestudioc.org/GrowLeader.